This prayer begins with a posture of gratitude, recognizing that the gift of a new day is not ordinary but sacred. Before asking for anything, the heart pauses to say thank you for breath in the lungs, for sight in the eyes, and for the opportunity to begin again. Waking up is acknowledged as evidence of purpose, a quiet reminder that life still carries meaning and that heaven has not finished writing this story. Gratitude shifts the atmosphere because it turns focus away from what is missing and toward what has already been given. In the stillness of the morning, before distractions take over, thanksgiving becomes an act of faith. It declares that even if yesterday was heavy, today carries fresh mercy. The mind is reminded that survival itself is a testimony. Many plans failed, many expectations were unmet, but the fact that life continues means grace has been sustaining every step. Gratitude reframes pain, not by denying it, but by placing it under the greater truth that endurance proves divine involvement. This moment of thankfulness also humbles the heart. It acknowledges that strength did not come from personal ability alone, but from unseen help that carried us through nights we did not think we would survive. Gratitude admits dependence, recognizing that each new morning is not guaranteed but gifted. That awareness softens the spirit, making it ready to receive direction, correction, and blessing without pride or resistance. As gratitude fills the heart, it awakens hope. If life was preserved, then purpose still exists. If eyes opened again, then opportunity has not expired. This prayerful gratitude speaks to weary souls, reminding them that they were not kept alive by accident. There is still something to learn, something to build, something to heal, and something to give. The morning becomes a declaration that despair did not win and darkness did not have the final word. Gratitude also steadies the emotions. Instead of rushing into the day anxious or fearful, the heart is anchored in appreciation. This creates peace before the battle begins. It sets the tone for the hours ahead, shaping thoughts, reactions, and decisions. A thankful heart becomes less reactive and more trusting, less burdened and more expectant. By starting with gratitude, the prayer aligns the soul with humility and trust. It says, I am here because I was carried, and I am standing because I was sustained. This awareness builds confidence without arrogance and faith without pressure. It allows the believer to move forward, not striving to earn favor, but resting in the assurance that favor has already been active. Gratitude transforms the morning into a sacred reset. It washes away resentment from yesterday and quiets fear about tomorrow. It teaches the heart to honor the present moment as valuable and meaningful. In this place of thankfulness, faith becomes easier, prayer becomes deeper, and expectation becomes natural. The new day is no longer approached as a burden to survive, but as a gift to steward with trust, hope, and quiet confidence. This moment in the prayer shifts the heart from looking backward to looking forward, making a clear spiritual decision that a new month will not be lived under the shadow of the old one. Declaring March 2026 as a fresh season is not denial of past pain, but a refusal to let it define the future. It is an intentional act of faith that draws a line between what has been and what is now being stepped into. The past is acknowledged, but it is no longer given authority over today's expectations. The declaration of a new month carries power because it changes internal language. Instead of repeating stories of disappointment, the heart begins to speak possibility. Old failures are not allowed to narrate new beginnings. The soul is reminded that time itself can be redeemed, that God specializes in turning pages even when people feel stuck on the same chapter. A new month becomes symbolic of new grace, new opportunities, and renewed strength for the journey ahead. Letting go of past pain is not easy, especially when wounds are deep and memories are persistent. Yet this prayer invites a release that is necessary for progress. Carrying yesterday's hurt into today's promise only adds weight that was never meant to be borne. Declaring a new season is an act of trust, believing that healing does not always come by revisiting the past, but sometimes by stepping forward with faith and obedience. This declaration also challenges the fear of disappointment. After waiting and praying without seeing immediate results, hope can feel risky, yet the prayer insists that hope must be restored. It speaks courage to try again, to believe again, and to expect again. A new month is treated as an open door rather than a repeated cycle. The heart chooses expectation over protection, trusting that disappointment will not have the final say. By naming March 2026 as different, the prayer activates spiritual awareness. It encourages attentiveness to small shifts, subtle opportunities, and quiet confirmations. New seasons often begin quietly, not with dramatic change, but with new perspective. The prayer trains the heart to recognize progress even when it comes gradually, understanding that transformation often starts internally before it becomes visible externally. This declaration also realigns identity. It reminds the believer that they are not defined by what went wrong, what was delayed, or what was denied. They are defined by purpose, by calling, and by divine intention. Stepping into a new month means stepping into a renewed sense of worth and expectation. The prayer resists the temptation to self-label through failure and instead embraces identity through faith. The act of declaring a new season builds momentum. Words shape direction, and direction shapes outcomes. By speaking life over the month, the heart becomes more open to instruction, more willing to act, and more sensitive to guidance. It creates an atmosphere where faith can function freely, unhindered by regret or fear. Choosing to see March 2026 as a fresh beginning is ultimately an act of surrender. It releases control over how things must happen and embraces trust in the process. It says that even if the journey has been long and uncertain, the future is still held by a faithful God. In this space, expectation rises, courage strengthens, and the heart steps forward ready to receive what the new season has been preparing all along. This part of the prayer calls for an intentional decision to elevate faith above fear, recognizing that both cannot rule the heart at the same time. Fear often speaks first, reminding the mind of past failures, missed opportunities, and moments when prayers seemed unanswered. It uses memory as a weapon, replaying old scenes to convince the soul that nothing will change. The prayer confronts this inner voice directly, refusing to allow yesterday's disappointments to define today's expectations. Choosing faith does not mean pretending fear does not exist. It means refusing to obey it. Fear is acknowledged, but it is not given authority. The prayer teaches the heart to respond differently, replacing anxious thoughts with trust and negative self-talk with declarations of hope. This shift is powerful because it changes how situations are interpreted. Where fear sees threat, faith sees possibility. Where fear expects loss, faith anticipates growth. The rejection of doubt in this prayer is deeply personal. Doubt often grows quietly, formed through repeated delays and unanswered questions. It disguises itself as realism, telling the believer to lower expectations, to avoid disappointment. The prayer exposes this lie and insists that guarded hope is not the same as mature faith. True faith dares to believe again, even after being wounded by waiting. This moment in the prayer also emphasizes control over the inner world. External circumstances may remain unchanged, but the internal response is transformed. Faith shifts the focus from what is lacking to who is present. It reminds the heart that strength does not come from understanding everything, but from trusting the one who does. This trust stabilizes emotions and prevents fear from dictating decisions. As faith rises, it begins to silence the mental noise created by comparison, pressure, and uncertainty. The prayer invites peace to take the place of panic and clarity to replace confusion. Instead of reacting impulsively, the believer learns to pause, pray, and proceed with confidence. Faith becomes a filter through which thoughts are examined and aligned with truth rather than anxiety. This choice of faith also renews courage. It empowers action where fear once caused hesitation. Steps that once seemed impossible now appear achievable, not because circumstances have suddenly changed, but because belief has been restored. Faith fuels perseverance, enabling the heart to keep moving even when progress feels slow. The prayer reinforces that faith is not passive. It requires active participation, daily renewal, and consistent focus. Each morning becomes an opportunity to choose trust again. Each challenge becomes a chance to practice belief. Faith is exercised through words spoken, attitudes adopted, and actions taken in alignment with hope. By declaring faith over fear, the prayer creates an environment where breakthrough can occur. Fear restricts, but faith releases. Fear closes doors internally before they ever open externally. Faith, however, prepares the heart to receive what is coming. It steadies the soul, strengthens resolve, and restores vision. In this space, the believer stands ready, not because the path is clear, but because trust is strong enough to walk forward without certainty, anchored in confidence that the outcome is held in capable hands. This portion of the prayer turns attention toward the areas of life where pressure has been silently building. It acknowledges that many struggles are not visible to others, yet they weigh heavily on the heart. By calling out the need for breakthrough, the prayer gives language to unspoken burdens and invites divine intervention into spaces that have felt stuck for too long. It recognizes that breakthroughs are not limited to one dimension of life, but are needed wherever resistance, delay, or exhaustion has taken hold. Financial strain is one of the first areas addressed because it often carries emotional weight along with practical stress. The prayer understands the anxiety of mounting responsibilities, limited resources, and unanswered questions about provision. It does not shame the struggle or minimize the concern. Instead, it brings it into the light, trusting that provision is not only about money, but also about wisdom, opportunity, and timing. Breakthrough in this area means relief from constant worry and the restoration of stability and confidence. Health is another area where breakthrough is urgently needed, especially when pain becomes routine or weakness is normalized. The prayer speaks to bodies that have been tired, minds that have been overwhelmed, and emotions that have been stretched thin. It recognizes that healing is not always instant, but it affirms that the process itself is guided. Breakthrough in health includes strength to endure, clarity to make wise choices, and peace that steadies the heart even while waiting. Relationships are also brought before God, particularly those strained by misunderstanding, silence, or unresolved conflict. The prayer acknowledges that emotional distance can be just as painful as physical separation. Breakthrough here means restoration of communication, softening of hearts, and the courage to forgive. It invites healing into spaces where trust has been damaged and love has been buried under disappointment. The prayer believes that reconciliation is possible even when human effort feels insufficient. Mental and emotional struggles receive special attention, recognizing that inner battles are often the most exhausting. Anxiety, discouragement, and quiet despair are named as real challenges that require grace and intervention. The prayer invites peace into restless thoughts and hope into weary minds. Breakthrough here means freedom from constant mental strain and the ability to rest without guilt or fear. What makes this part of the prayer powerful is its inclusivity. It does not isolate one struggle as more important than another. Instead, it affirms that every area of life matters and that no concern is too small or too hidden to bring before God. Breakthrough is understood not only as a dramatic shift, but also as gradual progress, small victories, and renewed strength. The prayer also emphasizes honesty. It creates space to admit weakness without shame and to ask for help without fear of judgment. By doing so, it removes the pressure to appear strong and replaces it with trust. This honesty opens the door for genuine transformation because what is acknowledged can be addressed. In calling for breakthrough in every area, the prayer restores hope. It reminds the believer that stagnation is not permanent and that movement is possible again. Even in the midst of uncertainty, the heart is encouraged to expect change, to believe that resistance will not last forever, and to trust that what has been held back will eventually be released in the right time and the right way. This part of the prayer recognizes that while everyone desires quick answers and immediate change, much of life unfolds through a process that cannot be rushed. It acknowledges that waiting can be just as challenging as the struggle itself. The prayer asks for strength not only to receive the promise, but to endure the path that leads to it. This request reflects maturity, understanding that growth often happens in stages and that transformation requires patience. The process tests character before it delivers results. Delays reveal what is happening internally, exposing areas where fear, impatience, or self-doubt may still be present. The prayer does not ask for the process to be removed, but for the endurance to remain faithful while walking through it. Strength in this context means emotional resilience, spiritual steadiness, and the ability to keep moving forward without becoming bitter or discouraged. Waiting can create pressure to force outcomes, yet the prayer calls for restraint. It asks for wisdom to know when to act and when to pause, when to push forward, and when to trust quietly. Patience is reframed as active trust rather than passive inactivity. It is the confidence that progress is happening even when it cannot be seen. This perspective protects the heart from frustration and impulsive decisions. Courage is another essential request within this part of the prayer. Change often brings discomfort even when it leads to growth. The prayer acknowledges that stepping into new territory can feel intimidating, especially after experiencing failure or loss. Courage is needed to release familiar patterns, unhealthy attachments, and limiting beliefs. It empowers the believer to embrace change without fear of the unknown. The prayer also addresses expectations. Sometimes blessings arrive in forms that require responsibility, discipline, and adjustment. Without strength, these gifts can feel overwhelming. The prayer asks for the capacity to carry what is being given, recognizing that preparation is as important as reception. Strength ensures that when opportunities come, they can be sustained rather than squandered. This portion of the prayer also encourages humility. It admits that understanding is not always immediate and that clarity often comes later. By asking for patience, the heart surrenders the need to control outcomes and timelines. It accepts guidance even when directions feel unclear. This humility creates openness to learning and growth during the process. The prayer highlights the danger of missing purpose by resisting the journey. It suggests that impatience can cause people to abandon lessons that are essential for long-term success. By requesting strength for the process, the prayer protects the believer from quitting prematurely. It reinforces the value of consistency, obedience, and perseverance. Ultimately, this part of the prayer reframes the process as preparation rather than punishment. Each step, delay, and challenge is seen as shaping character and increasing capacity. Strength becomes the ability to trust during uncertainty. Patience becomes confidence in timing, and courage becomes willingness to move forward despite fear. In this space, the believer remains grounded, hopeful, and ready, knowing that what is being built internally will support what is eventually revealed externally. This final movement of the prayer shifts from asking to declaring, from hope to confident expectation. It is rooted in the understanding that words carry power and that speaking life shapes perspective and direction. Instead of ending in uncertainty, the prayer rises in confidence, affirming that what has been prayed for is already in motion. Declarations are not made out of arrogance, but out of trust, aligning the heart with promises rather than problems. By declaring open doors, the prayer challenges the belief that progress is permanently blocked. It speaks against stagnation and closed pathways, affirming that access is being granted where resistance once stood. These declarations encourage readiness, reminding the believer to stay alert and prepared to walk through opportunities as they appear. Confidence replaces hesitation, and expectation replaces doubt. The declaration of favor shifts identity. It moves the believer away from a mindset of striving and toward an understanding of grace. Favor is not earned through exhaustion, but received through alignment. Declaring favor builds assurance that support, help, and recognition will come at the right time. It quiets insecurity and strengthens self-worth, allowing the believer to move forward without needing constant validation. Peace is another powerful declaration in this part of the prayer. It speaks calm into chaos and stability into uncertainty. Declaring peace does not deny challenges, but establishes emotional boundaries around them. It protects the heart from being overwhelmed and guards the mind against anxiety. Peace becomes an internal anchor, enabling clear thinking and wise decision making even in demanding situations. The declaration of joy is especially significant because joy often fades during prolonged difficulty. By speaking joy intentionally, the prayer resists despair and emotional numbness. Joy here is not dependent on circumstances, but rooted in hope and trust. It restores lightness to the spirit and renews motivation, reminding the believer that life is still meaningful and worth engaging fully. Growth and healing are declared together, recognizing that progress often requires restoration. Growth without healing can lead to imbalance, while healing without growth can lead to stagnation. Declaring both affirms wholeness. It acknowledges that emotional wounds, mental fatigue, and spiritual weariness are being addressed, making space for healthy advancement. This section of the prayer also reinforces forward movement. It rejects the idea of merely surviving and embraces the vision of thriving. Forward movement means learning from the past without living in it, building on experience without being limited by it. It empowers the believer to take initiative, to step out in faith, and to embrace responsibility with confidence. Declarations create momentum. They train the mind to expect progress and the heart to anticipate positive outcomes. Over time, repeated declarations reshape beliefs and influence behavior. The prayer uses this power intentionally, creating an atmosphere where confidence grows and fear diminishes. Ending with declarations reinforces certainty. It leaves the believer grounded in assurance rather than questions. The prayer concludes not with a request still waiting for an answer, but with a posture that believes the answer is already unfolding. This confidence fuels perseverance, strengthens resolve, and anchors the heart in hope, ready to walk forward with clarity, courage, and unwavering